Some walks are a sanctuary, others a descent into darkness. On August 5th, 2017, Peter Wrighton, an 83-year-old grandfather, set out for a morning stroll with his dogs in the quiet woods of East Harling, Norfolk, a routine that had brought him joy for years. But that day, a stranger driven by voices in his head turned a peaceful path into a blood-soaked nightmare, stabbing Peter 45 times in a savage, unprovoked attack that shocked a nation. This is the horrific murder of Peter Wrighton, a story of innocence shattered, a killer ignored, and a system that failed to protect. Join me as we unravel a tragedy that could have been stopped, but wasn't. Peter Wrighton was the kind of man who radiated warmth in the simplest ways. At 83, the retired BT engineer from Banham, Norfolk, had built a life of quiet contentment, 59 years married to his wife Anne, a father to Carol and Andrew, and a doting grandfather to Meg and her siblings. A lovely, gentle husband, dad, and grandfather, Carol told BBC News, her voice breaking with love. Anne, his partner through decades, shared his love for their community, often hosting friends for tea in their cozy Banham home. Peter had a passion for the outdoors, tending to his garden or taking long walks with his dogs, Gemma, a golden retriever, and Dylan, a spaniel. The couple had been active in the Thetford and District Canine Society for years, even serving as president and secretary, their love for dogs a cornerstone of their life together. Every morning Peter would drive his red Skoda Fabia to the woods near East Harling, a small village in Norfolk, known for its serene trails and tight-knit community. The path near Five Ways Junction was his favorite, a place where he could let Gemma and Dylan run free while he soaked in the peace of nature. On August 5th, 2017, he followed that routine as always. At 10:10 a.m., CCTV captured him at Kenninghall Post Office, just a 10-minute drive from the woods. Dressed in a black t-shirt and gray trousers, he bought a few small items, a newspaper, some sweets, smiling at the cashier before heading out. He parked near the street, clipped leashes on his dogs, and stepped into the woods, unaware that a predator was already watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At 10:45 a.m., the tranquility of East Harling's woods was shattered. Dog walkers Anne and Nigel Precious were on their usual route near Five Ways Junction, a quiet intersection of paths marked by a simple sign, when they noticed something odd under a patch of brambles. It was a body, lifeless and blood-soaked. It was Peter Wrighton, his throat nearly severed, his face and neck a canvas of violence. He'd been stabbed 45 times, the wounds so deep and numerous that his head was almost detached. Per the Guardian. "I've never seen anything like it," PC Andrew London later testified at trial, his voice heavy with the memory. "There was a very large pool of blood around the body, more than I'd ever seen." Peter's dogs, Gemma and Dylan, sat nearby, whimpering softly, their leashes tangled in the undergrowth as if they'd tried to protect him. The savagery of the attack stunned even seasoned officers. The injuries were so severe that police initially believed it was an animal attack, perhaps a wild dog or a fox gone mad. "It looked like a beast did it," one responder told the Eastern Daily Press, shaking his head in disbelief. But, as they cordoned off the scene, a darker truth began to emerge. The wounds weren't random, they were precise, deliberate, the work of a human hand driven by rage. Peter's body had been dragged under the brambles, hidden from view, a chilling sign of a killer who wanted to cover his tracks. East Harling, a village where everyone knew each other, suddenly felt like a hunting ground, and fear began to spread like wildfire. It took 40 hours for the truth to surface. A post-mortem on August 7th revealed that Peter's wounds weren't from an animal, but a knife, wielded with lethal intent. Norfolk police launched a full-scale murder investigation, but the delay had given a killer a dangerous head start. "We have somebody extremely violent out there," Chief Superintendent Mike Fawcett warned at a press conference, his face grim, per BBC News. We're asking the public to check bins, gardens, anywhere a weapon might be hidden. Over 100 officers descended on East Harling, combing the woods with metal detectors and sniffer dogs, while a police helicopter buzzed overhead, scanning the dense forest for clues. Others went door to door, interviewing residents, their questions met with fear and disbelief. The village was on edge, doors locked, walks canceled, children kept indoors. Detectives released a poster appealing for information, desperate for any lead. They traced Peter's final movements. CCTV from Kenninghall Post Office showed him at 10:10 a.m., but the 10-minute drive to the woods left a gap in the timeline. 3 men seen near the scene became vital witnesses. One, a man in his 50s, was found days later, but 2 others, aged 25 to 30 and 30 to 50, remained missing. We need to speak to them, debt-souped Andy Smith pleaded, per the Eastern Daily Press. They may have seen something crucial. As the investigation stretched into days, the community grappled with a chilling reality. A random killer had struck in broad daylight, and he could strike again. The killer wasn't far, just a few miles away, hiding in plain sight. Alexander Palmer, 24, a former British Army commando from Cringleford, Norfolk, was a man unraveling. He'd joined the Army in 2010, serving as a private in the Parachute Regiment. But a violent attack in 2015 changed everything. His head was crushed, his parents later told the court, per BBC News, leaving him with severe mental health issues. Discharged, Palmer spiraled. Diagnosed with a personality disorder, he began hearing voices he called Little Alex, a sinister presence that urged him to kill. I hate dog walkers, he told doctors, per court records, blaming them for his misery. They're always in my way, judging me. Palmer's parents saw the warning signs. He was collecting knives, refusing medication, and growing increasingly paranoid. They begged the Norfolk and Suffolk NHS Foundation Trust for help, warning that he was a danger to others, but NSFT dismissed their concerns, saying they could only believe the patient. The Trust's building in Norwich stood as a symbol of a broken system, one that failed to act even as Palmer's fantasies grew darker. He told a friend he wanted to kill someone, anyone, and specifically targeted dog walkers, seeing them as symbols of his own failures. A month before the attack, he scouted East Harling's woods, mapping out the perfect spot. On August 5th, when he saw Peter, an 83-year-old man, walking his dogs, Little Alex took control, and Palmer's rage exploded into violence. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A psychologist at RAF Marham, where Palmer had once been stationed, tipped off police. He's dangerous, she warned, per The Independent, citing his history of violent fantasies. Detectives dug deeper, and the evidence piled up fast. Mobile phone pings placed Palmer at the scene at 10:45 a.m. ANPR cameras caught his car entering and leaving East Harling, and DNA on Peter's trousers, a tiny speck of blood, matched Palmer's profile. On August 11th, 6 days after the murder, Palmer was arrested at his home in Cringleford, a quiet suburb just 10 miles away, his face expressionless as officers led him away in handcuffs. Police found Peter's red Skoda Fabia still parked near the street, its presence a haunting reminder of his final moments. In the days following the murder, officers conducted roadside checks, speaking to over 700 people, stopping cars along the quiet lanes of East Harling to ask if they'd seen anything unusual. They patrolled on horseback to reassure a shaken community, their presence a small comfort in a village gripped by fear. He was callous, calculated, debt-soaked Marina Erickson told BBC News, revealing that Palmer had scouted the woods a month earlier, planning his attack with chilling precision. They found a knife in his possession, its blade matching the wounds on Peter's body, though Palmer had tried to clean it. The net had closed, but for East Harling, the fear lingered. a scar that wouldn't fade. In February 2018, Alexander Palmer faced justice at Nottingham Crown Court, a grand building that stood in stark contrast to the quiet woods where he'd taken Peter's life. He denied murder, admitting he was in the area, but claiming he'd only gone for a walk himself. "I didn't do it," he told the jury, his voice flat, per BBC News. But the evidence told a different story. 45 stab wounds, a throat nearly severed, described as animalistic by prosecutor Stephen Spence. "This was a savage, merciless killing," Judge Stephen Holt declared, sentencing Palmer to life with a minimum of 28 years. "There was significant planning," the judge added, noting Palmer's reconnaissance trip and Peter's vulnerability at 83. The trial revealed chilling details. Palmer had attacked from behind, targeting Peter's neck to silence him quickly, then continued stabbing in a frenzy even as Peter lay dying. "He showed no remorse," Spence said, pointing to Palmer's calm demeanor after the murder. The Thetford and District Canine Society, where Peter and Anne had once served as president and secretary, had held a minute's silence in his memory months earlier, a small gesture of love for a man who'd given so much to his community. Members stood in a circle, heads bowed, remembering Peter's warm smile and his love for dogs. For Peter's family, the guilty verdict brought closure, but it couldn't erase the pain of a loss that never should have happened. For Peter's family, Carol Todd, Meg Todd, and Anne Wrighton, the grief was compounded by a bitter truth. This murder could have been prevented. "The system failed us," Carol told BBC News, her voice trembling with anger and loss as she spoke at a press conference, her eyes red from tears. Alexander Palmer had been under the care of the Norfolk and Suffolk NHS Foundation Trust from 2014 to 2017, his mental health deteriorating with each passing year. His parents had begged for help, warning NSFT that he was collecting knives, refusing medication, and hearing voices that urged him to kill. "He's a danger," they pleaded, per court testimony, but NSFT dismissed their concerns, citing policy. They could only believe the patient. The Trust's building in Norwich stood as a symbol of that failure, its doors closed to the desperate pleas of a family who saw disaster coming. A 2023 review of NSFT's handling of Palmer's case was damning. "Unfathomable," the report called it, its pages detailing chronic understaffing, long waits for mental health beds, and a failure to act on clear red flags. "Mental health professionals failed him, his family, and ours," Carol said, her words a searing indictment. Flowers left near Five Ways Junction became a symbol of a community's loss, a quiet tribute to a man who'd brought light to so many. But for Peter's loved ones, the systemic failures stung as much as the murder itself. Trust in the institutions meant to protect them had been shattered, leaving a wound that time couldn't heal. Peter Wrighton's murder left an indelible mark on East Harling, a village once defined by its peace, now scarred by violence. But his memory inspired change. In 2018, the community launched a buddy scheme for dog walkers, a way to reclaim the woods they'd once loved, per BBC News. At the launch event, residents gathered near Five Ways Junction, their faces a mix of determination and sorrow, vowing to walk together so no one would face the woods alone. A commemorative bench in Peter's name became a place of reflection, a spot where locals could sit and remember a man who'd touched so many lives. "He'd have loved this," Anne said, her voice soft, imagining Peter watching over the village he adored. Yet, the questions linger. Alexander Palmer, now at Wakefield Prison, may never reveal why he chose Peter that day, or if little Alex will ever stop whispering. NSFT's failures remain a stark warning, systemic issues unresolved, leaving other families at risk. Gemma and Dylan, Peter's loyal dogs, still wait for walks he'll never take, their eyes searching for a master who'll never return. Could this happen again? It's a question that haunts East Harling and all of us. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do to fix a broken system? And if Peter's story moved you, Subscribe for more true crime tales that echo the cost of silence.